Thank you to the director and to the committee for inviting me to speak at your conference. I'm going to speak about the ballet designs of Sophia Fedorovich. Diaghilev's model of collaboration between choreographer, composer and designer was a significant factor in the success of his Ballet Russe productions, where 19th century ballets had had as many as 5 different scene designers and another for costumes. Diaghilev brought artistic coherence to his ballets, typically assigning only a single artist to a production. His choices ranged from easel painters such as Léon Bakst and Pablo Picasso to the fashion designer Coco Chanel. In the 1930s, an English ballet tradition was developing in the tiny Mercury Theatre in London. The staircase from the dressing room led directly onto the stage and was often incorporated into the decor. The burgeoning ballet companies of Ninette de Valois and Marie Rambert were adopting Diaghilev's model, choosing primarily easel painters to provide their ballet designs. This paper focuses on one particular painter turned ballet designer, Sophia Fedorovich, and the ways in which fashion influenced her designs. First, I will introduce you to Fedорович and then describe in detail 2 of her ballet designs that show the influence of fashion. First, the aptly named Tragedy of Fashion, and secondly, Symphonic Variations. This timeline shows the significant events of Fedorovich's life. A quintessentially private person, the documented details of Fedorovich's life are few and far between. Humble by nature, she hated to be photographed and typically eschewed the convention of taking a curtain call for her designs on the first night of a production. Born in Poland in 1893, as a young adult, Fedоровich studied painting in Krakow. She worked for the Red Cross in Moscow during the First World War, where an exhibition of her paintings was described as impressionistic and sad. After the war and a bout of typhoid, she came to London to meet with her friends from St. Petersburg and spent the 1920s exhibiting her paintings in London and in Paris. In Paris, she even resorted to driving a taxi by night to finance her art, an enterprise which led to an encounter with a man who was to become her lifelong partner. Fedorovich's association with the ballet world began with Diaghilev's Ballet Russe, where she worked as a scene painter. She met Rambert at Enrico Scicchetti's studio, where she would go to sketch the dancers rehearsing for Diaghilev's 1921 production, The Sleeping Princess. The scenery was being painted at the time in London and in Paris. Rambert proposed that Fedorovich design the costumes for a charity performance for her students, and she did. Choreographer Frederick Ashton met her in 1925 and later said, "I was fascinated by her appearance. She was the first woman I had seen who wore her hair cut very short, and she dressed in a very singular way. She was a garçon type with a marvelously beautiful choir boy's face." Their first collaboration, Tragedy of Fashion, was to follow in 1926. The pinnacle of her career as a painter came in 1928 with a one-woman exhibition of her paintings at the Beaux-Arts Gallery in London. Despite this success, she remained very dissatisfied with her paintings, working and reworking them in an effort to meet her exacting standards. Her ballet work, however, was an immediate success, and she's reported to have seized all her oil paintings and burned them. Certainly, she had no more exhibitions of her paintings after 1929. When not working in London, Fedorović loved to spend time at her home in Brancaster, on the Norfolk coast of England. In Simon Fleet's biographical sketch, he describes her wearing her corn-coloured hair, short like a boy's. It was the simplest way, he said, and it suited her. He also observed that she wore mostly a faded old coat and skirt made from blue denim. It seems that over the previous decade, her sense of beauty and fashion had become focused on her designs rather than on her own appearance. Fedorović had an enduring friendship with Ashton. He valued her opinion on choreography as well as designs. He said, "She believed firmly that nothing must hide the dancing or impede the dancers, and that the background should not distract, and yet a magic must be induced." 20 years after their first collaboration, Symphonic Variations was considered by Ashton to be his most successful ballet, and it remains in the Royal Ballet repertory today. Fedorović died tragically in 1953 as a result of a gas leak in her London flat, a few days before the opening of Orpheus and Eurydice at the Royal Opera House, her final collaboration with Ashton. Although she is most closely associated with Ashton, Fedorović also choreographed for many others, including de Valois, Anthony Tudor, Andre Howard, and Robert Helpman, leaving a legacy of designs for 34 productions. A Tragedy of Fashion was first performed in the Lyric Theatre in London by the Rambert dancers in 1926. It was the first professional production for both Fedorović and Ashton, and the start of a collaboration and friendship that was to last for over 25 years until her death. Ashton had seen Le Train Bleu and originally wanted Coco Chanel as his designer. However, Rambert refused him, saying that they could not afford her, and in any case, in her view, dress designers did not make good ballet designers. Maybe she had a point in that Chanel's costumes for Le Train Bleu were knitted with wool, and they were very hot and itchy to dance in. Instead, she recommended Fedorović. Tragedy of Fashion is a one-act ballet set to Eugene Goussain's music Kaleidoscope, a suite of short piano pieces. It takes a light-hearted but satirical look at the fashion world of the 1920s. It tells the story of a couturier, Monsieur Duchic, danced by Ashton, and his partner Orchidée, danced by Rambert. They welcome a pair of wealthy customers to their salon and show them two previous creations worn by the house models. Désir du Cygne, dressed in white, the longer dress, and Rose d'Espagne in pink satin. When these are rejected, Orchidée reappears in Duchic's latest creation, a masculine golden brown evening suit. She emphasizes the freedom of movement it allows by performing cartwheels and splits, tricks for which Rambert was well known. The customers are scandalized and depart. Monsieur Duchic cannot bear the rejection and stabs himself with his dressmaking scissors, leaving the models to lament over his corpse. According to Rambert, Fedorovich immediately produced beautiful designs of the right character and a perfect set representing a salon panelled with mirrors, with vague silhouettes of models reflected in them. Fred was delighted with Sophie's sketches, she said, and she was very impressed by his talent for choreography. Two enormous pairs of scissors loom rather ominously on either side of the set. As this design for Orchidée's first costume shows, Fedorovich's sketches for her designs were not works of art in themselves, such as those we associate with Bakst. They were more of an aide-memoire for shapes and for colors. As Ashton said, her designs were only a point from which to depart. Cubist-inspired fashions, such as this one from Vogue magazine in 1925, may have influenced this design. Fedorovich worked closely with the dressmakers who produced her designs, rather than have them rely on her sketches. Her longest collaboration was with the couturier Mathilde Etsch, who said, "She spent many hours in my workroom over a period of years, completely fascinated by materials, and would handle them with great wonder and delicacy." Etsch described Fedorovich's hands-on approach to selecting fabrics. Sophie would bring her sketches, and I would fold or drape a length of fabric until the mood or feeling of the sketch was captured. At the fittings, the method would always be the same. No sooner would the costume be on the dancer than Sophie would say in her gruff voice, "Move." The dancer would move with pins falling and lengths of diaphanous fabrics trailing to the floor. It was in the workroom and at the fittings, rather than at the drawing board, that the magic Ashton spoke of happened. The character of model Rose d'Espagne, danced by Francis James, was based on Madge Garland, a fashion journalist who was later to become the editor of Vogue magazine in the UK. She is shown here, photographed by Cecil Beaton in 1927. The costume was in pink satin with a low cut back and a large bow at the base of the spine and pearls around her neck. A chic confection, according to the ballet writer Cyril Beaumont. The second model's costume also reflects contemporary fashion, as this dress by Chanel from 1924 shows. It seems that no offense was taken by the fashion world in response to this ballet, Quite the contrary. Ashton appeared in the next issue of Vogue, where his dancing was described as a perfect expression of the spirit of that whimsical ballet. "20 years later, Ashton and Fedorovic collaborated on Symphonic Variations, a one-act ballet that would earn Ashton comparisons with two of the great choreographers, Petipa and Balanchine. Created to music by César Franck, the plotless ballet incorporates the themes of winter changing to spring, chastity to fertility, and death to rebirth. Performed by just 6 dancers, 3 female and 3 male, on an empty stage, Symphonic Variations reflects the confidence of its collaborators. Barnes wrote, "Her work has an economy of line and colour. Nothing is wasted." Although accounts vary, the greenish-yellow backcloth of Symphonic Variations seems to have been inspired during a bicycle ride near Brancaster with Ashton. He said, "We came up a hill and suddenly there was the most marvellous glade filled with sunshine, and this had the most terrific effect on us." The French artist Christian Berard sensed her reference to spring and described the decor as lily of the valley. The dancers were costumed in white, contrasting with the pale green backdrop. The women's tunics were a variant of practice dress, Greek in feeling. The pleating is a Fedorovic trademark, but especially when combined with the draping of the men's costumes, resonates with Greek imagery. The bands of black at the man's waist, ankle and wrist link the costumes to the black looping lines of the backdrop. We can also see a nod to haute couture in the designs. The tunics suggest the fashions of the 1940s with their pleated skirts and strapped tops. The following short film clip from the beginning of Symphonic Variations shows Fedorovic's talent for illustrating the choreography. Look out for where the women turn on point, changing direction from facing one side to the other. Dance scholar Beth Genet describes it thus: "As the women turn and turn again, their skirts bell out like miniature whirlwinds, or in line with the fertility motif, like flowers suddenly opening." seems appropriate to end this presentation with a quote from J. Wood Palmer from an exhibition of Fedorovich's work in 1963. In her sensibility to movement and the dance, her flawless sense of line and colour, and her instinctive response to the mood and meaning of the subject, she has never been surpassed as a designer since the golden days of Diaghilev. Spasiba.